Hi, my name is Tori Davis, and I'm a senior at Johnson University in Knoxville. I have almost graduated with a bachelor's degree in urban studies, just like my classmate Caleb Newman, with whom I created this project. We put this presentation together for you after a semester-long class called Urban Strategies, which is the capstone for our major, in which we read a book called Appreciative Inquiry. And our professor encouraged us to find an organization in Knoxville that we thought would benefit from the ideologies and plans laid out in that book. So part of this presentation will be on your organization, the way that we understand it, the way that it can be viewed from an outside, and what we can glean from your website and other information. And then part of it will be about the appreciative inquiry process and how we believe that you could be benefited by that. So here is your mission statement, of course, on the left, which is how we understand the essence of what your organization stands for. And then based on other sources, we've put together our understanding of other things that you guys are currently dealing with. So some of those are your current goals. We know that you are hoping to open up a new home and some new programs to work with the victims in East Knoxville that you are able to interact with. And we know that you're also hoping to just find a further and deeper interaction in the East Knoxville neighborhood where you work, and hearing the community on what they need and how you can serve them through that. Like every ministry, there are certain opportunities and certain challenges that come with the context in which you work, and we want to recognize that. So one of the great opportunities that you guys have is Likewise Coffee. Not all organizations get to have a coffee shop and get to meet with the community in such a different context than their typical ministry. But that's definitely something that we see you being able to take advantage of through your ministry and grow and show Christ's love in a completely different context. And of course, your drop-in center is that other context, the other end of the spectrum. And that is definitely a really cool opportunity that you get to work with people one-on-one in a very candid way. And so we see that as a benefit to the context in which you work. And then, of course, challenges come alongside that. We know that many sex trafficking organizations like to work with police forces because there's a lot of legal action involved, as you know. But we understand that in your community specifically, there's a general mistrust of police, and so that doesn't feel like an option, and that has got to be a challenge. We also know that drug use can be an issue within your neighborhood, and that some people, victims and general people that you work with, and even police officers that work in your neighborhood, understand a blurred line between prostitution and sex trafficking. And that can be, I'm sure, a big issue. And so we want to recognize not only those opportunities that you have that make your ministry work really well within your context, but we also want to validate the struggles that you might deal with and show you a way towards the end of this project that you might be able to start overcoming those or start navigating what can come out of this. Now that we've established a good understanding of your organization, we wanted to be on the same ground about how sex trafficking organizations generally work on a worldwide scale. So when you do the research, it seems that there's lots of websites rallying behind the cause, that there are a lot of people who care about it. Even you could say it's become kind of a bigger hot topic issue in the last few years than it has been for a long time in the past. However, it's kind of unclear how a lot of these organizations operate. There can be a decent amount of ambiguity behind where funds actually go and how victims are actually treated and what the outcome rates are if people successfully recover and how that works and how they track that. There tends to be a lot of ambiguity behind that. So we know that there's good being done out there, that there are lots of organizations who are countering these issues and this justice problem. However, it can be kind of difficult to find that, and therefore it's likely that you may have felt some loneliness as entering into this field, and definitely like a draw into the field because the work that's being done out there might not be advertised, and there's also, of course, not as much work as we would hope.
So I'm going to dive into sort of what best practice models are. And if you look at those models, you can see that best practice is a method or technique that has been generally accepted as superior to any alternatives because it produces results that are superior to those achieved by other means or because it has become a standardized way of doing things. Something that is an example of a best practice for um, anti-trafficking organizations is to have some sort of house, some sort of space that is physically separated out from where the men or women or children would have been sexually harassed or assaulted or raped or whatever that may be in order for them to heal from the physical wounds, from the drug abuse, and from any sort of circumstance, as well as being given large amounts of trainings and things like that to prepare them to live a life outside of that. Um, and you guys expressed that very well. It's very easy to see that's exactly where you guys want to be headed. And you have all these things set in place to get there. So I wanted to talk a little bit about something like a holistic mindset. A holistic mindset would involve every single aspect of your community transformation. It's something very clearly seen in Block Ministries. And talking with people who work at Block and know how that place operates, it's very clear to see that their process of the interchanging in between each part of their organization is a lot more muddied and isn't super distinct and clear, even though these places have their own distinct identities for what they are. And there's a separation in that sense. A lot of the lines are blurred and it fluctuates very heavily between these two understandings. So that's something to think about and looking at that organization that we know you all sort of look to as like a not a father organization or mother organization, but some people you see doing a lot of good in another place and doing something that you also desire to do here in Knoxville. Also, another thing I think would be really cool for you all to engage because you already are engaging with it, even though you don't necessarily know the terminology, is that appreciative inquiry process. Because it just looks at the good in the organization and develops a positive sense of clear communication and goes back to that, that holistic mindset of change because you're doing it from within and you're using your best skills as an organization to become better. So yeah, those are just a few insights from the best practice models that I'm encouraging you all to look into. There's also some insights from the faith-based urban transformation models, such as by Crane. This is very easy to see in the book Sowing Seeds of Change by Michael Crane. There are many different beneficial concepts that come from that text, such as one where he talks about how the idea of oppressed in our society is often distorted. And in reality, people can be oppressed by so many different things, from the rich, natural disasters, or personal failures. And that's something that is really important to recognize. And I think that you all recognize well. Another concept of urban transformation and a faith-based mindset is talking about this idea and that God calls Christians who seek a place of the city where they will dwell not to withdraw from participation in government simply because it is the will of God that governments use the sword. Utilizing legislative action that can make a difference for the women in Knoxville is a really different concept and different way to go about urban transformation that isn't currently, to my knowledge, being done at Raising a Voice. And I think it could be something that is really beneficial just to even take a look at, or to look at different organizations in Knoxville like CCHT and the work kind of that they have done prior to around 2015, 2016, and legislative things that they've passed. It's some pretty cool stuff that they've done there. And there's also definitely the idea of placemaking. That is just such a powerful concept that he mentions in chapter 14. If you want to read the book, I have it. I can loan it to you. But the topic of placemaking in the city, he quotes and says, I quote, I'm quoting him saying, land is central, if not the central theme of biblical faith. There are so many different formed theologies of faith, and the Greek worldview was so wholly centered on it. You know, that idea of placemaking, living where you're working, and doing all of this. It was just so important for that community aspect. Christians who seek the shalom of the city are all called to build their houses in the city and live in them. And that's from Jeremiah. So I'm just in a way here encouraging you all, because I know that oftentimes, especially in Park Ridge, East Knoxville, there's this idea of a white-centered gentrification that happens in this area of the city. And places like Newton Knox or something might post that Park Ridge is a neighborhood where gentrification is running rampant. All these people that are doing this in the area sort of look like you. And that's always not the easiest to be around, because people often associate you with those different, not in my backyard types of people, when you guys know that in reality, land is central, if not the central theme of biblical faith, in regards to placemaking, and that you have to be living in the area where you're working, readily available for your community to interact. And I just wanted to encourage you all on that. Yeah.
So this is where the appreciative inquiry process comes into play. There are 4 Ds to this process. They call it the 4D process. That is discover, dream, design, and destiny. Each of these has different ways that they can play out depending on the different organizations, but this is the general process. And again, this is outlined in the book Appreciative Inquiry. So the first step is discover, in which an organization asks itself and asks its members and its stakeholders, what gives us life? What do we do best? What drives your organization? What is it that when this happens, you get super excited and you celebrate and you say, yes, let's have more of that. And then the next one is dream, in which you ask, what could be better? What would happen if you had even more moments like this where you get what you do best way more often? What would that look like? And then the next step is, of course, how do we get there? You just start to try to maximize how to get to what we do best based on past experiences. What brought us here last time, and how can we start bringing that into more situations so that we get this celebration, this victory, this yes moment more often. And then the final D, destiny, is the easiest one, likely. You just kind of decide, okay, these are the steps. We already have the steps put in place about how we're going to get more of what we do best. And now we're just going to let it play out. We're going to start actually putting it into action and seeing how it changes. And so we love the process of appreciative inquiry because it doesn't look at an organization and say, what are the problems and how can I fix them? However, you look at the organization and you say, what are we doing really well and how do we get more of that? Not only is that going to lead to better morale among your employees, it also just feels a lot more fun to say we're focusing on doing more of the good stuff than talking about the bad stuff. And we believe that that is an awesome way to glorify God.